We are at Livability Lab 2.0. And I'm going to start this Livability Lab off with a story. First of all, for you, those of you that are new to Livability Lab, my name is Mickey Wallace, and I will be your host for today, helping you conduct scheduling and move accordingly to our time frame, and hopefully bring in some smiles and some reminders of just the impact that we are making with this initiative, okay? All right. So the year is 1776, July. A group of citizens, politicians, and influential members of the community gather in a room. They discuss socioeconomic issues, education, commerce, public safety, health, and they strategize a way to develop society in a way that benefits them. These policies further inequity. They further exploit the poor, and these policies create poverty. The year is 2019, September. A group of citizens, politicians, and influential members of the community gather in a room. They discuss socioeconomics, education, commerce, public safety, health, and they strategize a way to develop society that benefits the whole of humanity. These ideas seek to further equity, raise awareness, uplift the poor, and reduce the conditions that lead to poverty. The day is August 11th, 2020. A group of citizens, politicians, influential members of the community gather in a Zoom in the midst of a global pandemic to show resiliency, desire, purpose, determination, and to continue the work of dismantling the inequities and biases of systemic racism. Welcome to Livability Lab 2.0. Yeah, if we were in person, that'd be a whole thing going on after that, right? All right. But we're here now. So hopefully that brought a smile, and just a reminder that the work we are doing is the work that will carry on for decades and generations and centuries to come, okay? So what we are doing here today really does matter. That's the tone of our meeting. That's the tone we established in Livability 1.0, and now we're back to continue the work. Muskegon County does not turn away in the face of challenges, even challenges as big as COVID-19. And we need to keep pushing forward. We need to have real conversations about racial inequities. We need to have real conversations about uplifting our community and really about creating the change and being the change that's so desperately needed. We don't turn away. What we do is use the innovative action, the community-led visions, and the cross-sector connections that make Livability Labs so successful. We sit back, we analyze, we develop, and we get to work. Let's take a moment to hear from some of our core team members, from neighborhood associations to the presidents of colleges and hospitals, from businesses, nonprofit leaders to public servants, and how they've pushed on since we were all together for Livability Lab 1.0 on January 23rd. And we're gonna go to the video. I apologize, I'm going to step back and introduce, I apologize. We're gonna step back for just a moment, and we're gonna welcome all the members of our Livability Lab. So we'll have Kathy Moore, Shire Chair our Shire Chair presentation, and we'll have our housekeeping. I'm gonna go back to that slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. I'm just here to welcome and thank everybody for joining us yet again. As chair of the Shire, this is an amazing movement. I call it a movement. It's an effort, it's a movement, it's an organization, and it is a community collaborative where the first time I've seen more diverse engagement of community on a a health and social economic issue in all my career, and that's extended multiple decades. So I'm very, very happy actually to see you, Mickey, as the MC with all the energy that you bring. And just extremely happy to see right now 85 participants on this Zoom. This is probably the largest number of participants in any Zoom meeting that I've participated in since COVID. So once again, Muskegon County community doesn't disappoint. We have leaders, we have passionate community people, and I am so glad you're here today. Welcome.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. This work continues, Muskegon, and you are a part of it. 80 plus people and counting. This work is happening. Before you now, if you are on your laptop, desktop, tablet, or phone, you should be able to see the Livability Lab 2.0 virtual launch day agenda. This goes through that list, and while you are reviewing that list, I'd like to check in with our moderator for any housekeeping details that we need to be mindful of when it comes to camera, microphone, or anything like that. Cece, would there be anything that the audience needs to be aware of when it comes to operations here today?
Not that I'm aware of. Hi, guys. I'm helping host the Zoom for today along with the Livability Lab team. No, as Mickey has said, keep your cameras on would be awesome. We will keep everybody muted when we have an agenda going and when people will be speaking. So if you accidentally come off of mute, you might get a little message that we have put you back on mute. Once we get into the breakout rooms, people will be encouraged to speak and you will be given some further instructions there. You should automatically move into a breakout room at that time. And if you don't, we will make sure to get you assigned to one. So no worries, we should have a smooth ride here today.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Cece. All right, now that you've heard from the Shire Chair, Mrs. Kathy Moore, I'd like to give a moment for the Shire Director, Mr. Michael Ramsey.
Good morning, everyone, and again, thank you for being here. Mickey, I want to thank you for such a wonderful introduction. I can't think of something that's more passionate and moving than the words that you just spoke, and yet how real it is for everyone who's involved. So you guys are looking at the agenda for today. That's because I am a stickler to know what's going on, and so I begged, bartered, and steeled to have this up here, just so that way you know what's happening. We have our presentations from our core leadership, which is a wonderful, wonderful video. We'll have two guest speakers, then we'll do some highlights and reflect on what we've done before, because we know that as we move forward, we're going to take that experience and that information with us. Then we'll look at the changes to the process within 2.0. We'll break out into our expanded livability element action teams, and then we will come back together and talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
All right, man, a few words, straight action. I love it, Michael. This is why we're here. This is the game plan. Let's go play. I love that. We're going to go ahead and roll our video so we can have a moment to hear from some of our core team members, neighborhood associations, the presidents of colleges and hospitals, business owners, nonprofit leaders, and public servants.
Everyone, and first off, thank you so much for all of your work with the Livability Lab, the 100-day challenge. So much was accomplished during that time, and one of the greatest caveats that I heard as a leader that helped me was to hear voice of people from different sectors and the things that you are working on and how we need to be better connected. So much of our work is sometimes done in silos. And when you think of the amazing opportunity for us to come together and be more interconnected, it makes so much more sense. The problems we deal with are so complex. And when you talk about equity, coming together gives us the opportunity to look at where do we have commonality and where we could do a better job.
The 100-day challenge last year really identified how collaborative our community is as a cross-section of this community came together work together, individuals and community organizations, to show what we can do to impact the social influencers of health in this community. And I'm just proud to see the community come together like that.
The cross-sector of the community together, over 300 people together from the community, from the neighborhoods, from every sector of our economy, to really look at what are the issues that we want to work on together, that we want to bring some solutions.
I've been in this community most of my life, and I've never, like I said, seen people come together like that and stay together. And those people who had to leave, they came back. So that just really impressed me, that we really had something to talk about and discuss. So
maybe the best thing was knowing that there was a common will among the different neighborhood associations to make a growth and to improve their situation.
The Livability Lab process really helped the college as an institution do the work that we thought we could do, that we planned for, but given the opportunity to help, we were called upon and we did do that work. So I think the process, I think those who put the Livability Lab in motion, and we were able to do that work as an institution.
The first 100-day was a great structure. It made us participants really get involved and really focus on something that's tangible instead of 4 or 5 focus steps. It's really focused on the first 2 steps, and it really gave specifics to every person involved, whether what background you came from. It really pulled you in.
When COVID hit us in the community, the relationships that had been developed during the 100-day challenge really helped bring us together. So we ended up having a weekly meeting with the health department and United Way and some of our other organizations like the health system, the medical group, Affinia, elected officials, Health West. We had a weekly huddle to talk about the needs of the community and make sure that we had shared messaging to the community, make sure that we had resources available, looking at kind of the PPE that we needed in this community. And I would also say that the health department and hospital relationship has never been stronger. We are talking together all the time about testing, adequacy of testing, places where we're going to test in the community. So just that partnership really evolved out of the 100-day challenge.
COVID-19 in many ways has shown the inequities of our community and where we need to be better. And we all want to have a healthy community. As an ISD leader, I want every child to graduate, and I want them to have a great future and a great career. And I know we can't do it alone. The Livability Lab gives us an opportunity to come together and learn from each other, but also look at really good solutions where we can have the best movement. As an example, when COVID hit, we knew about the food insecurity in our county, and a lot of people don't recognize that in the first 6 weeks, we served over 1 million meals in Muskegon County. We did that by being innovative, by working across sectors, by working together, by listening. And imagine when we take heart and we focus on the right things, and when we're aggressive to do the right work, look at the outcomes that we can achieve.
For us to pivot with COVID-19 and employees, I mean, very concerned about our employees' health. We're very concerned about people coming into the courthouse and the vulnerability of the elderly, those who might have medical conditions. So all that is taken into play on how we bring people together. And I mean, we had to figure out how to continue hearing cases, hearing family matters, anything that would affect our community. How do we continue serving them? So really, it was a drastic procedures really related to bringing the courts back in, the families back in, and making sure that that process continues.
In fact, the model that we put together around eviction prevention as a community is now able to move forward. And the rest of the state is using our model in that work. And so that's just one of the successes. Childcare, many communities have lost a lot of their childcare. We were like on point because of our childcare action team to get together with our childcare providers and say, what do you need from us to to stay afloat. We were able to meet with our legislators and tell them what the needs were. There were dollars built into the budget to help them.
We are currently working with many partners in the Muskegon area to make sure that our economy is getting restarted and to make sure that our vulnerable customers, our low-income families and senior citizens have access to quality energy, low-cost energy.
What we did was Marquis got some masks that was donated from Access Health. So we gave them out to our neighborhood. We gave them out to our senior citizen residents here in Muskegon Heights. Not only in Muskegon Heights, we gave some to Hartford Terrace too.
Our Health and Wellness Center on campus has been we've been planning for that building for about 10 years. With the unfortunate advent of COVID-19, we had the opportunity to use the building about a year and a half after we opened it. So this past, what was it, late March, early April, over one weekend, we converted that space, which is respiratory therapy, primarily medical assisting health and wellness in terms of our academic programs on campus. We converted that space into a hospital. As it turns out, we never had to use that space as overflow bedding for our community, for, in this case, again, Mercy Health. But we were there, we were at the ready, and we are still in that position to be able to convert it back to that use if we needed to do that.
We'll take those points that we learned from, those points of how can we have a central location for citizens to go to find out what's happening right in their community, as well as others to be able to have help from those communities.
Because of the pandemic, we've had a lot of time where, you know, we've had Zoom meetings where we could talk to folks. Marquis has, you know, he's gotten in our heads. So now we have a resident council that we are working with the city. It's new, and it's new to the city, but we're working with them so we can roll it out, so we can be a part of the process here in Muskegon Heights.
We're sort of moving into a new normal as a society and as a community, and you know, we have to come up with innovative ways to move forward and progress with some of these initiatives that we've already started.
We'll take what we learned this summer, even what we learned last fall or this summer, and be able to have a diverse stakeholders at the table, understanding their needs, our needs, and bringing that all together with this group that very well together.
Moving the Livability Lab forward, to me, is critical for Muskegon and for our region, that we continue this work and continue this work well.
Awesome. So in my mind, everyone's clapping and crying and all that good stuff right now. So we're going to keep things rolling. I want to give a humongous shout out to my good friend, Mrs. Carrie Vanderhoff, for producing that video that we just saw. She has so many skills. So be on the lookout. She's everywhere. And I want to give a, not just an accolade, but just a sincere note of appreciation for the hard work that entire team of the Shire continues to do. And to our very own Mary McDonald for building that core team. They have been just monumental in carrying out the trajectory of Livability Lab. So thank you to that team for not only producing that video, but the content that went into it. All right. We're going to keep rolling. So since our last convening, there have been conditions that have globally exposed historical wounds in the conditions of our communities, namely COVID-19 and racial or ethnic equity. We'll start off by welcoming two special guest speakers to share with us on COVID-19 and racial ethnic equity. To cover the topic of COVID-19, we'll have our very own Director of Public Health for Muskegon County, Ms. Kathy Moore. And covering the topic of racial equity, we'll have our very own Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Michigan, Mr. Garland Gilchrist II. Please help me welcome our first speaker, Mrs. Kathy Moore.
Thank you very much again, Mickey. As now I'm taking off my head as chair of the Shire and putting on my public health director hat. You know, even I, as the public health director, could not imagine the I don't want to call it devastating, but you know, the potentially devastating impact of COVID-19 in the Muskegon County community. You know, I saw it on the news. I saw it in China. I saw it hit United States in Seattle, and then the bigger metropolitan areas, New York. And even then, when I was watching those stories, I thought, well, you know, Muskegon County, it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to get here, or it's not going to be as I guess as major as in some of the other places. Then in mid-March, Muskegon County experienced our first resident, and before the end of the month, we had recorded our first death as it relates to COVID-19. Just amazingly, as a lot of the presenters alluded to in the recording, Muskegon County has always been just an amazing collaborative group of leaders, community leaders, and community individuals that just come together to help. So right away, we started getting calls in public health of residents who were willing to help us in any way possible. Like Gary mentioned, Mercy Health, Public Health, Mercy Health, and a lot of the community stakeholders, health and human service agencies, we met weekly and trying to stay ahead of this. Then our residents really stepped up to the plate and really engaged with us. They really participated in the precautionary measures. And because of that, I feel like many lives were saved. I believe our numbers could have been much, much higher. And I want to thank everybody for your role in helping us manage this COVID-19 crisis in Muskegon County. The numbers where we are today, as of yesterday, as of last night, we have recorded 1,133 cases of COVID-19. That is the total cases, the total mountain there. The cases recovered to date would be the blue graph, and we have recorded 871 cases to date as recovered. Total deaths, 58 deaths related to COVID-19. 3 individuals positive with COVID-19 died as well, but they were not COVID-19 related deaths. 2 were car accidents, and 1 was another health condition. So as of today, we are managing just over 200 active cases of COVID-19. If you notice the red chart, we reached our peak of active cases in mid-May. Then the number went down towards the end of June, and I believe July 2nd or 3rd, we reached another low peak. And then after July 4th, the numbers started climbing again. And the difference between the first hump of positive active cases and the second, the second rise or incline, of course, is not as high as before. But these are younger individuals, age 30 and under, and also the potential exposure has been identified more as social gatherings as opposed to work-related and congregate settings in May. We talked a little bit about how COVID-19 is impacting the minority community. So I want to show just a brief picture there of the 1,133 cases. 386 of those cases are Black, and that's 34%, which is disproportionately greater than the percentage of Blacks in Muskegon County, which is recorded at around 14%. In addition, we've recorded 9.3% of those positive individuals as Hispanic. We think that number is low. We think there's more than that 9.3%. But even at 9.3%, that is disproportionately greater than our percentage of Hispanics in Muskegon County. So again, COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted these minority populations. As it relates to death, we have recorded 16 of the 58 deaths as Black, and that's 27.6%, and 2 Hispanic, which is 3.4%. Again, thank all of our community partners and community stakeholders. Health West, Hackley Community Care, Mercy Health, Michigan Works, Muskegon Family Care, everybody came together, and United Way, of course. And we met on a regular basis. As Gary alluded to, we really put the community in mind. We thought about the vulnerable populations. We've worked together. Public health, we did not have the capacity or the staff to manage a community-wide crisis. And if it was not for the help, the assistance of all of these community organizations, including, of course, the Health Project, which is the backbone of the Shire, we would not be in the situation we are today. I feel like, we do have COVID-19 is still in Muskegon County. COVID-19 still has a very devastating impact on families and individuals. 58 deaths is still too many. Any deaths is still too many. But I do believe it could have been so much worse. I really feared that it would be so much worse. And I really am 100% grateful and appreciative of all of you, our residents, our agencies, and our community. We would not be where we are today if you had not helped in this regard. So again, thank you very much. That is my brief COVID-19 update as of today.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the many hats that you wear, Mrs. Moore, for the leadership, the inclusiveness, and the transparency that you bring to these positions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Indeed. Okay, up next, our second guest speaker to build or expound on the impact of racial equity, our very own Lieutenant Governor of the state of Michigan, Mr. Garland Gilchrist II. Okay, this just in, we're having a few technical difficulties, but that never stops the show, especially where Livability Lab initiatives are concerned. So we're gonna go to our very own community organizer, Mr. Marquis Childers.
Hey everyone, sorry to the technical difficulties. Let's just say I'm wasn't prepared, but hey, I would say this. During the pandemic, when the pandemic happened, and like Ms. Kathy Moore just stated, we had the health disparities the health disparities showed nationally, and especially locally, with the numbers being disproportionate that way. Another thing that it showed was I went out and did some surveys as during the pandemic, I couldn't like go touch anyone, so I had to use, since it's 2020, which would be old school measures of picking the phone up and just calling people. So I had picked the phone up and was calling all residents, and did a survey. I collected around 50 surveys, and the stories that was going around, it was not only health disparities, but you had a number of people who, of course, the high unemployment rate. So you had people losing their jobs, getting furloughed. And what happened was you had some of those the trusted community members was getting furloughed, and that left misinformation going around in the community. In Muskegon Heights in particular, it was more of, how could I say this, just to give it to you exactly how it was verbatim. When the pandemic first started, you actually had African Americans thinking, we can't get this virus. That don't touch us. And then it just actually hit us. It went from, oh, it can't touch us, to the media kind of covering as the African American virus, as far as that's who was catching it the most and dying from it, and as well as our elderly. And in Muskegon Heights, we have a high elderly population, especially with our ownership of houses and our homes. And to get out there and to hear those stories of people was not trusted of the hospital. They're not. It's not to just bash anyone. That's not it. It's to actually pinpoint what was said and what was deemed true to those who stated that. And I would say the community did not trust so much the testing, going out to the hospitals, and that was before COVID. So it's not just a COVID-19 thing. This was before COVID. So when COVID hit, it made everyone kind of go back into their silo shells of not actually being able to come together. So you couldn't come together. And what can I say? That lost the connectivity and communication. So the communication wasn't getting around, the proper communication. There was a lot of information, but it was misinformation getting back to the African American community. And I would just say that again, with the racial inequities, you got it's out there, and the thing is, it has to be addressed, and it's not nothing to. We all know what it is, so it's not to come in say who's the bad guy. But I'm saying this: Muskegon County has a chance to be an outlier to the entire country, and that takes the people to see themselves as the change. Whether you black, white, Mexican, young, old, fat, skinny, it don't matter. We're all humans, and we got to live together in Muskegon Heights. Whether you work, play, or not Muskegon Heights, Muskegon County. But I'm saying, I would say this: we can do much more together than we can do siloed apart. And if it's really about addressing racial inequities, it's about doing with each other and not to each other. And that's what I would leave you guys with. We would like to, no one likes to get told what to do with their life, but listen. We listen, we learn, we take that perspective of other people's experiences, and then we make that the best that we can be in Muskegon County. And that's how we're gonna watch Muskegon go. Thank you.
Thank you, Marquis, for stepping in for that quick minute. Yes, applause all around. And for pinch hitting for Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. Thank you so much. Just so everyone is aware, we will have a video to share with everyone, not today, from the Lieutenant Governor. He apologizes for the technical difficulties, but he does want to be a part of the process. So he wanted to make sure that all of us know that he supports and revels in the work that we are going to move forward doing, which is awesome. So after that exciting, both of those exciting presentations, I'm going to give it back to Mickey.
Thank you, Michael. Just want to give a special acknowledgement to my good friend, Marquis Childers, who works tirelessly behind the scenes. It's important that we as a people, collectively, everyone here and abroad, understand what that term is, that equity. We're not saying equality, we're talking equity. And one of the key things that Marquis touched on was the lack of trust in the institutions that are designed to provide equitable treatment and care and services to the community as a whole. That's no one person's individual job to remedy. It's all of our job to remedy, because so many hundreds of years ago, those things were written into policy. And even though the policies were eradicated or overturned or rewritten for the betterment, the implicit biases still exist. The habits of separation, of inequality still exist. And that's why we have to work so diligently at rooting them out. Thank you, Marquis, for being a real boots on the ground type of person. He works tirelessly, and that's one thing I know for sure. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for bringing together the neighborhood associations into one collective entity to serve the people. You guys and girls, you all at Muskegon Shire and at Livability Lab are just, you're everything. Thank you very much. Up next, we have not just a member of the community, but a soldier on the front line. During that time between March and July, as Marquis spoke, there were surveys that were gathered. And what we're providing today is a snapshot of national, state, and local impact factors, okay? Now, this recently gathered data is reflecting our current community conditions, but it builds from the framework that we introduced in Livability Lab 1.0. So to review the highlights of this, we'd like to welcome my good friend, Ms. Vonnie Woodbury.
Good morning, everyone. It's data time. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mickey. I think anytime we have to focus in on data, there's going to be a certain percentage of the population out there going, oh, it's data. Oh, well, data now is everything, is it not? And I am, Logan is my, thank you, Logan. Logan will be flipping the slides for me so we can get through these quickly, I hope. But I wanted to start our discussion with data in looking at our Livability Lab framework. And let's underscore that word matters. We measure what matters. At no other time, I think, is it so important for us to benchmark our work as we begin to look forward and as these teams begin to come together again. And I'm hearing someone.
Housekeeping, I'm going to ask that everyone please mute their mics. If we could have our Zoom facilitator, please make sure that everyone except Vondi is muted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you all should be familiar, those of us, or those of you who have been involved in Livability Lab in the past should all be familiar with our framework. And I want to remind you, you'll see there on the slide where you can download the framework. And in the middle, of course, is our vision, followed by the 5 livability elements. They're in blue, and they represent those elements that we believe people need to thrive. And as a community, again, we've always tried with Livability Lab to think about our aspirations rather than our deficits, which is why this is a bit of a challenge when we talk about data today. But we're aspirational after all. As Marquis said, let's be an outlier. Let's be that community that thrives in this environment. Our community conditions are, as always, located around, and I don't care if we call them social determinants of health or we call them something else. Let's remember something about these, that these are the same elements, or the same, pardon me, conditions that get in the way of somebody being successful at work. So maybe there's social determinants of work elements or conditions. They also are the same conditions that get in the way of educational achievement. All of these things, social determinants, however we talk about them, they're those pieces out there that really influence our lives and influence the success of everyone. as you know, or hopefully you will all know by the end of this, when you go into livabilitylab.com and when you click on to any one of those community conditions, you get a wealth of data about our community. So first of all, that data can be used to help all of you in benchmarking the work that you've done. All of that data is, we've pulled it from 2019. It's all that data that we had accumulated prior to the impact of COVID-19. Now, at that point, we were in a pretty good place economically. We didn't have high unemployment. We were zooming along. The downtown was developing. And so as a benchmark, it's a good place for us to start. But one of the things that we know going forward is, especially as we think about government and funders, whether they're local funders or funders nationally or the government, is there going to be fewer resources as we go ahead. And the communities that are going to achieve are those that can measure what they're doing. What does that measurement mean? And we also need to figure out how far are we from the initial measurements that we had of where we were. So again, the data was mined in 2019, and we also will be looking forward to census data that should be coming in, and that's a reminder that wherever you are, we need to encourage everyone to finish those census data. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, coronavirus. Now, you know, Kathy and Marquis, and we've all talked and we all know about coronavirus. I think what amazes me about coronavirus when we think about it is just how quickly this happened and the huge impact it's had on us nationally, as well as locally, as Kathy went through. Think about it. It was declared a pandemic on March 11th. Here we are, August 11th. How many months have passed? Not that many. And yet this has had, it's created, as the slide says, one of the deepest economic recessions in our nation's history. At peak, we had over 50 million people unemployed. We're down to 16 million. But going forward, I mean, as we look at that, even that, 16, if it's going to 9 to 10 million, we know it's going down, but even going down to say 9 or 10 million, we are actually at a point where we were in 2008, which was the last Great Recession. So it gives us a sense about how far we have to climb going forward. You know, I don't want to read the slide. You all know the impact that this has had, but it's unraveled so many pieces of our community and the sorts of data that we're going to be looking at. We don't have a lot of local data, and I really appreciate what John Severson said. There's a lot of embedded data out there that we're just not aware of. The fact that we were able to feed, we were able to offer up 1 million meals to people in the first 6 weeks of COVID says something about our community. And one of the things we're going to ask all of you to do is, as you're meeting, is to think about where we have embedded data that we can pull out and we can add to the larger discussion. The thing about COVID is it touched everything, touched every element of our lives, from business to education to our health. Everybody took the hit. And as a result, then there's no way you can sort of subdivide that data and say, okay, there's childcare over here, or here's housing over here. All of it links together. And as we think about this next whole area of Livability Lab, this Livability Lab 2.0, understand that all of this in blending together means that even though we're meeting as groups, that there's data out there that needs to be shared across all of our basically the different things we're talking about. Next slide, please. Thank you. The murder of George Floyd. We were talking about this the other day at a staff meeting, and Mickey said, I said, you know, George Floyd died. And Mickey said to me, no, wrong word, murder. We have to call it as it is. And one of the things that we've as a community that we have done in the past and is we've examined this issue of equity, and particularly through Able Change. And let me get to that in a moment. But I want to emphasize in this particular issue that this was, you all know, we were all watching television and watching this event play out and seeing it again and again. This touched something different we knew things were happening, but it's touched us in a totally different way. This didn't just touch a nerve. It touched all of us straight through the heart and into our psyche. What kind of nation do we want to be, and how do we change it? I think one of the most important data sets that comes out of this is that last one, that based upon crowd size, not just in this country, but internationally, this represents the largest movement in our nation's history. This is profound. And if we think about what it is we need to do to really reach equity, one of the first things I want to recommend that all of you do, especially those of you who have been with Livability Lab and with the Shire from the beginning, is go back and look, and we'll get this data to you. You haven't had it in advance, but early on, when we were doing Able Change 1 and 2, we made a commitment. And again, those of you who are in the room will remember this. We made a commitment. We wanted to be an equitable community. In Able Change, and those of you who aren't familiar with Able Change, that really is our change model, how we really want to run systems change in this community. But Able Change 3 and 4 asked us to look at all of the current policies and procedures that disadvantage people in our community. We have this data. We broke into groups back then. We looked at health, we looked at employment, we looked at behavioral health, we looked at food, education, and housing. And as a part of that, we also looked at doing a personal equity assessment. How are our organizations doing? We talk a lot about the work that's being done in the zone, and marvelous work that Marquis has done, and the folks who are out there organizing neighborhood associations. But as Penny Foster Fishman told us right at the beginning, you can't change just an area without changing the system. It's the system. And the system is deeper and it's bigger than what happened with the police and with George Floyd. It's just one piece of a system that top to bottom needs to be re-examined. And in this community, one of the things that we did as part of our equity assessment is we looked at systemic causes. We looked at how we were doing as individual organizations. And again, we will be sharing this data with you because it's very important data. And what we found, of course, is that as organizations, as systems in this community, that we had a long way to go before we really demonstrated that we wanted equity. And so this is going to be a challenge. And all of you, as you meet in your groups, we really want you to look at that. We want you to emphasize this. It isn't enough just to change and to add additional capacity in any one area. It also is about, is that capacity equitable? Are we bringing everybody with us? As the Marines would say, you leave nobody behind, and this is our moment in time to do that. Next slide, please. Okay, we did 3 surveys. They're very different surveys. We did a Muskegon Heights resident survey. You'll see there, we surveyed 50 individuals. Marquis got on the phone along with others in Muskegon Heights. And then we did a community crisis survey. That was 160 individuals, and that was done online, also done in April. The important thing to remember about both of those surveys is those surveys occurred before the George Floyd murder, if you will. And so they speak specifically to the impact of COVID. When you look on the right-hand side, some of the quotes, it's after that second quote, which really comes out of our Livability Lab team members, which and that was after the George Floyd murder. That for the most part, everything that people looked at had to do with economics, about losing jobs. They're very emotional kinds of quotes. And you'll see, again, under the larger part of the slide, the 4 core questions that we asked. There were 2 additional questions for Muskegon Heights, and there were also the Livability Lab member questions that you'll see there, where we asked members of our teams, where were they at? What do you think is most important? So you have all that data. It was sent to you earlier. I think that as you look at this data, a couple of things I want to point out. First of all, on the Muskegon Heights data, if you look at the data set that you received, there's the piece on Muskegon Heights. You've only received part of that data. One of the things we made a commitment to folks living in Muskegon Heights as the data was gathered, especially since it was gathered resident to resident in a trusting relationship, is that we hold on to that data as much as possible until the residents themselves give us the ability to release it. However, what I would point out is the data that you are receiving from Muskegon Heights was done at the onset of COVID, when it was really starting to hit the community, something Marquis referenced. And I think that what's profound about that, and one of the differences that I noticed in looking at, for instance, the broader community crisis survey, is in the community crisis survey, people were talking economics, they were talking my job loss, they were talking about, gosh, the kids are home, what about school? In the Heights, people were talking about, I'm afraid I'm going to die. Totally different. And it was so profound. We saw this huge impact of people coming in and really, and saying that this was something that they were frightened by. And that issue that Marquis raised about communication, extremely important at that point. So you do have this data. These are, again, it's qualitative data. It's what people have told us. And so as you go through that, you know, it's important that you, again, put that in the context of where did we start back last year, back in 2019 with that initial data. What's changed since then? Next slide, please. Okay, so this is how the wonderful Carrie Vanderhoff has displayed the data, which is, I mean, I don't think Carrie ever sleeps. She's done a remarkable job throughout all this process, but you'll see the Livability Lab element is on the top in the blue. The community condition, you'll see where that is. You'll see the community input, and we've not included every bit of input, or you would have had, trust me, many more pages than what you're receiving. And then what we've added, one of the things that we did is we pulled state and national data as we went along. We don't have much in the way of local data. And again, this is something that we're asking all of you to consider. Where there is local data that we can begin to enter into our data sets, we really want that and we need your help. But the state and national trend data also gives you a sense about where we're at, what's happening. And we've tried to take this up as close to the current day as possible, but reports on what's happened with childcare, what's happening with housing, what's happening with food, anything we could get our hands on, whether it was state or local data. There was some local data, but frankly, very little. And let's face it, we've all been working in our shells and trying to take care of those pieces that we're responsible for. So we are looking for all of you to sort of join in and let us know where there is local data. We really want to capture that. Next slide. So we're back in action. So these are the things we want you to remember. First of all, remember to download the framework. Create your benchmarks. Think about what was it like before COVID? Where were we at? We weren't anywhere near to perfect, but there were elements, conditions, root causes. Think about those root causes. Go back to those root causes. What did the experience of COVID mean to root cause? What did it tell us more about root cause? Second, review. You know, as you review that data and reflect on this, on what we have, again, do that contrast with the current status of your previous team activity. Where was your team headed? It always amazes me if you say, well, our team was done. No team can be done in this environment. What happened with childcare? Christine mentioned childcare. We know people can't go back to work without childcare. Kids can't go back to school and there's no childcare. Oh my gosh, what happens to the economy? Again, look at those intersections, that cross-sector piece that really can and will hold us back. Think out of the box. Read and consider our new community input data. What are people telling us about their lives? What information do we still need, and what would you now prioritize? Our priorities have changed. There's no way that we could get around it, and that's really, really important as we go forward. Identify any new local or state data that emerges from your work and was influenced by COVID-19 or by the Black Lives Matter movement. That's, you know, again, we just don't have as much local data as we need. And as you get that local data, we want to plug it in. And in fact, what we'd like to do is on a weekly basis, send out updates from all of the teams. So we've discovered this piece of data or that piece of data, and we want to share it so everybody knows what we're looking at. So again, send and share it to me, and we will be sending that information out. And remember too that your coach and your Livability Lab 2 team members are there available to help, provide technical assistance, and onward we go. Use your data. Remember, data, the data tells us where we're going and how far we have to go, but also where we're really seeing success and where we're really able to do all that we can and really change what's happening in Muskegon County. Let's be that outlier that Marquis talks about. Let's be that community that moves ahead of every other community in the state because we have this framework of Livability Lab. Thanks, and on we go.
Rhonda, you can't see it right now, but they are standing up and they are clapping. And you got the left brainers and the right brainers. They are all in it together. Now, so thank you very much, Mondi. I'm going to speak to what you said initially. I'm more of a right brainer, so I'm kind of artsy fartsy, but I really appreciate you being able to substantiate this work with that data, because without it, we don't have a trajectory. We don't know where we're coming from or where we're going. So for all of you right brainers out there, if you missed any part of this, or if you did not get the email with these documents in them, please reach out to the Shire Livability Lab team so you can stay abreast of what's happening right here in your own backyard, okay? All right, so let's get everybody worked up, fired up, and engaged, because those numbers just did something to me. They excited me. You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? They excited me, because Muskegon, the work that we are doing really does set the precedent. And just like Marquis said, in more or less words, we're small enough, yet we're large enough of a county to show that if we can impact change here, it can be used as a model for other states, other cities, other counties, right? Other municipalities, because this change is needed across the board. It's not just a Muskegon, Michigan issue, right? It's a global issue. It's a humanity issue. So thank you, Bonnie, for being the left brain to our right brainers here today. All right, let's get into the work. Let's talk about how we bring this together, how we bring that left brain and that right brain work together, because no matter which side you're on, you don't want to live life with just one half your brain. So we got to bring it all together, right? We got to make it make sense. So let's go back to the work that we focused on with Livability Lab 1.0. This is where we started. It was the focus on the community conditions within our livability elements. And because I'm such a right brainer, artsy fartsy guy, that number 19 keeps popping out. And during that Livability Lab 1.0, we came up with 19 initiatives that we identified in our community to put action plans behind and to push forward for the betterment of our community as a whole. 19, right? That number is the number of completion, 1 being beginning and 9 being the end. It is a prime number because it's only divisible by itself. And so 19 teams, it made a powerful statement. And on top of that, Muskegon, we were the first initiative to have that many measures from the initial sitting. So as many times as the Livability Lab framework has gone forward, Muskegon was the first time that 19 initiatives were identified and put into action. So that's something to be proud of, because we are aware of the need here. So all of that energy, we're rolling into 2.0. Now 2.0, where you're at right here, right now, digitally tuning in, hope your Wi-Fi or your internet is locked and loaded, because this is the growth process, all right? We're bringing those 19 teams, those action teams, we're bringing them together, and we're bringing them into 5 elements to create expanded items that will use the knowledge that they've learned from our previous experience to align your teams and choose one big star-studded goal to reach as a team. Okay, so we're taking those 19 action teams and we're going to consolidate them into 5 elements and we're going to define one goal from each of those elements that we can use to create systemic change in our area. Okay, to help us with this work, we'll have coaches. Shout out to all of the people that kept up with the schedules of Livability Lab 1.0. There were note takers, there were facilitators that joined all of those different teams at their meetings and kept minutes to build on this data. So we'll have coaches available, and they're here to ensure that all the strategic planning fosters an actual action-oriented plan, because we're tired of meetings, right? Everyone's here is tired of meeting just to meet. We want real action-oriented plans. And so our coaches are going to assist the team members in recognizing those opportunities to really align that work from the previous efforts and build them into the livability element teams, okay? We'll have our community conveners. The community conveners will provide guidance, mentorship, and support each respective element's strategic plan. Okay, so the community conveners are gonna support the strategic plan, the coaches, and the action team members, okay? Now, I'm gonna bring in my good friend, Mr. Michael Ramsey next, but keep in mind before we bring him in is that we have to speak the same language to move forward as a team, to move forward towards that beneficial future for all. We have to use the same terms, we gotta speak the same language. So we're talking define, design, do, and learn. We define what that need is, we design a system to approach that need, we try it, and we learn from it to review, okay? So up next is my good friend, Mr. Michael Ramsey, the director of Muskegon Shire.
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you so much. So what Mickey says is right. We spent our first 100 days doing that process. And as we sat down to think about how we could build what we are currently experiencing on, we really sat down and talked about how there was need to take what we had learned before, what we were going to use now, and then have an output. But there also needed to be a way to come back to that and reflect. And in the words of my dear friend, Mary McDonald, to make mid-course corrections if necessary, Michael. So that's what we did. To speak to Carrie Vanderhoff yet again, I sent her a text message that said, Carrie, here's my idea for a new challenge process. I want it to have some bubbles, and then a bubble that you can pop in and pop out of when you need to, but bubbles. And so the image that you see before you today is her brain just doing those things. So today we're introducing to you guys the 5 R's, and the 5 R's are relief, recovery, reflect, retool, and reform. And you'll see as the image illustrates that the reflection piece of it, that dark orange bubble, has a piece in all of the other areas of what we're going to do throughout the next 45 days. So let's speak about them. When we talk about relief, we're really talking about the immediate help for our rapidly changing community conditions, how we identify and prioritize what we're going to do. And in that is embedded the define, design, do, and learn process that we all learned at cycle 1.0. Then we can reflect. That's the best part. After we've provided immediate relief, we move into reflection and we review and then we report out so that we know that what we've done is relevant and real for the community members that we're trying to serve. And let's be honest, right now, that's all of us. Then we can move into recovery, and the recovery is really looking at combining our original process, which is pre-COVID, with specific filters that we're looking at now, such as moving into a COVID recovery community and racial equity. For the first time, we are in a room and calling out that the ultimate root cause of health inequities is racial equity, that systems of oppression have been in place for so long that they have affected the physical health of not only us, but our friends, families, and neighbors. So we need to make sure that everything we're doing, we're processing through those filters, is what I like to call them. And then guess what? We get to reflect. And through that reflection, we get to review to make sure the work that we've done is real and relevant. And then we get to report. Reporting is the best part, because within that data, we're going to know where there are other opportunities that will allow us to identify, as Vondi so eloquently stated earlier. Then we get to retool. Determine the areas for strategy for capacity building. You know, the assumptions that we made a year ago back in 1.0 were great. They worked then, but we live in a very different place now. So it's time to adjust that in real time, which also lends to that reflection, to innovate and then acknowledge structural weaknesses. And then guess what we do? We reflect. And then we can move into reform. So the reform portion is very, very important to all of us. We can see that it's about implementing strategic changes to a system to target those norms that don't meet the needs of our community anymore, you know, to ensure that efforts are aligned with system-wide efforts and that they're grounded in community-informed decisions and feedback. So that data that we're receiving, not only from ourselves, but from our friends, family, and neighbors, that is what we're using to identify where the opportunities are and how we can help to address them. It's it's another start of that process. But when we look at reform, it also goes back into reflect. And then guess what? New needs are identified. And then we cross right over into relief. So much like in our first iteration, define, design, do, and learn, you know, all of our action teams, they were able to get through any point in that circle and call it a win, because it is an ongoing process. The 5 R's are also an ongoing process. It is built such so that when you think you're done, you then get to identify what you have collected through data to start the work over again, or to laser focus in on these opportunities for systemic change. Now, I keep saying systemic change. That is something very different from 1.0. 1.0, we really looked at individual effects and programmatic opportunities. We're looking for each expanded team to have one goal that will affect systemic policies, procedures, or operations within our community. I think that is the end of my notes, and if I don't stop talking now, I'm going to keep on going. So Mickey, I'm going to go back to you.
I was coming to save you, brother. I was coming to save you.
I will not stop.
Thank you, Michael Ramsey, for setting the stage for, and we're going to keep things rolling in the interest of our time. Again, the biggest thank you that we can do is to be as respectful as we can of everyone's time today. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome my good friend, Mr. Logan Jensen, to the forum to introduce our community conveners, coaches, and the breakout sessions.
Thanks, Mickey. Welcome, everybody. So at this time it's going to be a little different. We're going to split up and do 5 smaller rooms. So what you see on the screen is the 5 livability elements. We have a coach for each one and a community convener. So that first livability element, economic opportunity, the community convener is going to be the Muskegon Heights Business Association. And Brad Hastings is going to be a coach for that team. He was a coach last time, but I'm going to be filling in for him today. So look for me for those breaking out into the economic opportunity group. And you'll see in the orange those teams from the Livability Lab 1. So if you were on one of those teams, we took that into consideration, and you'll be automatically moved into those teams as long as your email matches your registration. So hopefully all of you will automatically be moved into your team of interest that you provided. And for those who don't, we'll be manually doing it. So just hold tight in this main room, and we'll make sure you get in the right place. So our second one is education. The education team is going to be looking for their coach, Doug Wood. And Reed Muskegon is going to be the community convener for education. We have health, education. Your coach is going to be Brennan Gorman for education. I apologize. With Reed Muskegon as the convener for education. Health is the next one with the health project as the community convener. You're going to be looking for your coach, Doug Wood, for the health element. Safety and security, we have our convener, mediation and restorative services. So for those of you in that group, you're looking for your coach, Stephen Winston. And finally, we have social connection and trust with Access Health as the convener. So for those of you in that group, Carla Flanders is going to be your coach. However, we have Alicia Cox filling in for her today. So look for Alicia if you're in the social connection and trust. So